Hi, I'm Kim Bischoff, the Executive Director of the NF Network. Thank you for joining the Neurofibromatosis educational meeting, which has been sponsored by Alexion Pharmaceuticals. Thank you very much for that sponsorship, making this possible for us tonight. The topic today is going to be bringing NF clinical trials to you. Tonight, we're going to have Dr. Paul Moots, Dr. Vanessa Merker, and Mike Sage all speaking to us on these topics. We'll also learn a little bit about good communication with our healthcare providers. So right now, I'd like to talk about the very first topic that we're going to have. We're going to explore clinical trials and discuss how you can contribute from home to help shape the future of NF. Also, this evening, we'll learn tips about how we have productive conversations with healthcare providers. We're very fortunate tonight to have Dr. Paul Moots with us. He's the president of the board of NF Tennessee, a board member of the NF Network. He's a neurologist and a neuro-oncologist, as well as the former director of the NF Clinic at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Throughout his 34-year career, Dr. Moots has participated as an investigator in 38 clinical trials, primarily focused on gliomas and other nervous system tumors, including MEK inhibitor trials for plexiform tumors. Today, he's going to present for us resources available for people with neurofibromatosis to find research opportunities near and far from home. This talk will highlight ways to lower the barriers to participate into research. Thank you so very much, Dr. Moots, for joining us tonight.
Hello, and thank you all for joining in, taking the time to participate in this webinar on research. I really want to thank the NF Network and Kim and the whole team, Debbie and John and everybody for their support for research and all they do for NF. And I think this is a really nice program that they've got going with this series of webinars to get everybody aware of what kinds of research is going on and all they do to support it. So I'll move ahead. Here we go. Well, what do people think about research in the NF community? And I'm from the group NF Tennessee, and we put out a survey that we've had out for the last year and a half or so, asking individuals their thoughts on a lot of topics, but when asking specifically about research for NF occurring in Tennessee, 90% of the individuals who responded agreed strongly that that was important to them. And in fact, it was the highest category or question in terms of a strong response like that on the whole survey. I was really impressed by that. So a lot of people think it's important. You know, what's behind that? Well, the whole collection of NF-related disorders are relatively rare, and there's a lot of unknowns. So research answers a lot of important questions. And I think in seeing what's happening in research, people get a feel for what is developing in the field, what the new ideas are. New knowledge is coming about, and that feeds into some very important things for patients as far as a sense of progress and a sense of hope that better things will be available as treatments for them. So it is really important. What else do people say about research? Well, there are a lot of barriers, both personal and practical issues that make people somewhat reluctant or question, why do this? You know, would it help? People might say, well, for my problems, is that going to be worthwhile information for other people? And I have other problems besides NF. Does that impact what I can do? A lot of people say they don't want to be a guinea pig. They don't want to take extra risks. That kind of thing. And you see here, the guinea pig is kind of the great example of a laboratory research animal. They're not from Guinea and they're not pigs, but they sure are a hallmark for an experimental research project. Anyway, people feel like they don't want to be in that situation or that it might be too risky for them. There's also time and expense and travel and things like that that go into a lot of traditional clinical research, particularly clinical trials. And for some people, that's just prohibitive. And then there's the question of where would I find out about research? And, if it's all medical and science jargon, am I going to understand any of it? These barriers, and I would say personally, I think the personal barriers are a bigger a holdback or a bigger reason why people don't get involved. But this whole list, and a longer one you could imagine, researchers are aware of and are doing things systematically to try and reduce these barriers or make it more comfortable and conducive for people to participate in research. And a lot of the rest of what I'm going to talk about really highlights ways to be involved and participate that might be easier and get more people involved. So what opportunities are there? Well, I was for many years involved in the NF clinic at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. And we had kind of a spectrum of research opportunities that we tried to get people involved with. There's simple things, relatively simple, like participating in registries and things like that, extremely low risk and easy to do. And then there's all the way to clinical trials for tumors, and including we were involved in some of the MEK inhibitor trials. Occasionally would have patients that needed other experts and needed trials that we didn't have. And so there's that whole spectrum. Two that I want to specifically point out that really opened my eyes to some new ways of thinking about research in NF. We had a graduate student a couple years ago, Michaela Bradley, who wanted to do a survey trial on stress and coping and whether or not a patient with NF1 had a family history of NF. And she put this all together and said, well, in estimating how many patients need to respond to this, it would take about 700 to get good results. And I'm thinking, well, you do chemo trials, and if we get one or two in a year, we think we've struggled to do that, So to get 700, wow, is that really possible? And she put together a coalition, a team of different organizations and different ways of reaching out. And in the course of a few months, 3 or 4 months, got almost all of the data collected for this. It was really incredible and eye-opening for me. And it is the case that she's moving forward with that, and I think it's going to be the case that will be published soon, So really a great job and an eye-opening experience. And the other thing that I found a couple, probably 3 or 4 years ago, work by Dr. Merker in Boston at Mass General with the NF clinic there, that was an online research and training project for young adults, mainly young adults with stress and anxiety. And so this was right in the COVID era, and to have something like that available online, and really now anytime online, those kinds of opportunities really have come to the fore. And so those are two things that really kind of catalyzed my thinking about how to get more availability, as far as research goes for NF patients. Well, how to look? Where would you go to find, research opportunities? And I think, here's a list. I'm sure that it's not entirely exhaustive, but to go to national NF organizations, all of them support research and make that a big part of their program. And that's a good place to start to hunt for trial opportunities. Almost every institution that has an NF clinic, and there's quite a few really, and really good ones across the country and around the world, they all have listings of clinical trials. That's another place you might look. And then there are online databases for trials, and basically the entire gamut of clinical research you can find in trials that are in online databases. And we'll talk through each of those. I think it's really important when you go in and are seeing your NF doctor, your NF specialist, to ask about clinical trials for the particular problems that you're facing. And there too, almost all of the people in this community as medical providers will have some insights about what's available. And so they're a good source. What and how to understand it and how to get involved, they can help you with. I think it's good to build a knowledge base, and you'll find some of these sites where you look online that you can actually save your search strategies and kind of come back to them and update them and build your knowledge base that way. It's important in all of these things that we do online to exercise some good judgment and you know, not every source is a medical source, and so be a little bit you know, conscientious about and think through, well, are you getting expert advice or not? You know, people worry a lot about their computer skills, and I would say if you can email and you can do a Google search, you can do all of what I'm talking about. And if you need help in doing that, there are people who can do that. If you need help in understanding the material that you find and what's really relevant, and there are people that can help you that way too. So seek out the help if you need it, but it's really not that difficult. As far as national resources, now I'll start with the NF Network, and they have a real strong effort now to support research through clinical trials and through research grants. And you'll find on their website drop-down page that says participate in NF research. And on there, you'll find 4 currently, you know, right there on the page, research opportunities that you can get involved with. One's about community care for NF, which Dr. Merker will tell you about more. One's sleep, one's cognitive changes as people get older, and one's on early tumor detection. But here, right online, you can find 4. There are also links on the NF Network website to clinicaltrials.gov. We'll talk about that more later. And when you look there, they have it queued up to search for NF trials. And it will show you a total of 337, of which 69 are currently actively recruiting patients, and 15 haven't even opened for recruitment yet. But so it kind of builds from back since this database began 20 plus years ago, you know, all of the trials that have been registered on it, which is a huge number. They also have on the NF Network webpage a link to the Clinical Trials Consortium, and there are 11 chemotherapy trials available there. They have a link also to Antidote, which is a trial database where you put in information about yourself, and really not very much, and it will provide you with information about trials that are relevant to your medical condition. And so this is actually a good way to kind of be aware and find studies that are relevant to you. In addition to the NF Network's homepage and website, there are these member organizations that are part of the NF Network. And NF Tennessee, again, the one that I'm connected with, is the newest one and really the kind of infant of this group. And all these others are organizations that have a long history of support for research and interest in getting patients involved in research. And sometimes you'll find information that's locally relevant as far as trials and surveys and things like that. So all of these are good places to go and look when you're searching for what is open and available as far as clinical trials. The other really kind of largest of the national resources for patients is the Children's Tumor Foundation and their website, which of course has a NF registry. They support research a lot, but they also sponsor this registry, which is for all types of NF and the schwannomatoses now. They have over many years collected information on individuals over, now I put 11,000, I think more currently it's well above that. And when I looked to see as far as in Tennessee, what was available or who was signed up on this registry, there were 270 individuals. And in the state of Tennessee, that would represent about 10% of the estimated NF population. It would be about 2,500, 2,700, something like that. And I thought, oh, that's really good. 10% sounds like a good number. And yet I also scratched my head a little and said, well, why isn't it 80 or 90%? And I think some of that is these personal barriers or people feeling like, oh, it won't make a difference, it won't help, or why should I put my info out there? It really does make a difference. It's become a valuable source for guiding new research endeavors, new problems to focus on. It really has been valuable that way. It's valuable to pharmaceutical companies. What problems have the biggest number of patients that are affected, those kinds of things. This registry also, as a bonus, I shouldn't say a bonus, but as a very valuable contribution, it will find and let you know about trials that are relevant to the problems that you include in your information. And this is back from a couple of years ago, but they sent out information to those target patients on 51 different research studies in 2022. So, I mean, they can get back to you and say, here's something that may be of special interest to you for research. So that's a great thing that they contribute and that you get back from participating. There are some other registries and also natural history studies, which are a little bit of a different category. The natural history studies often are not just putting in information, but involving getting some kind of testing, maybe an MRI or blood testing or some kind of evaluation that can be followed serially, as years go by to kind of understand how things progress or if things stay stable. Those kinds of studies, natural history studies, were fundamental to the story of MEK inhibitor treatment for plexiform neurofibromas, where when people got started, they said, well, do these tumors grow? How fast do they grow? What percentage of the tumors change over how many years? That kind of what would be viewed as control information really was available because of natural history studies. So the NIH has studies that have been open or currently are. I also found at Johns Hopkins, they had kind of a interesting larger list of natural history studies and registries, and I think they're really worth looking at. There's an NF2 Natural History Consortium that's run out of the House Ear Institute in California. There are registries that are basically genetic information registries, and particularly I'll mention the NF2 mutation registry in the United Kingdom. And then St. Jude's has a study here in Memphis, Tennessee, that is monitoring familial cancer predisposition. Let me move ahead. There are a lot of good NF clinics around the country and across the world, and they all have good websites, or essentially all of them, and sometimes that's a place where you might go to look for what trials are available. I found that a little bit less efficient and less productive in a sense. And yet some of them are very good. And just for example, the Johns Hopkins NF Center, they really have a nice website with trials laid out, and I think it shows what's active and that kind of thing. Washington University in St. Louis has an extensive list of trials, and yet a lot of those are trials that have been done, kind of over the years and aren't necessarily active now. And it shows what a long history they have of research, and yet it's a little harder to say, well, what would be available now when you use that site. And I think a lot of the clinics will have links to clinicaltrials.gov or other databases, and yet not so much in terms of what's available there at their site. At Vanderbilt, I think one of the problems with looking is that our NF trials get mixed in with a long list of oncology trials, and at other places it might be listed along with neurosurgery or neurology trials. And so it's a little bit harder to search and find what you're looking for. So you can, if you're going to one of these places or there's a particular physician that you want to see what they're working on, this is a good strategy. But in general, I think it's a little bit harder to use as a search strategy for finding research opportunities for you. There are some other national organizations, just to kind of complete this part of the discussion, that are worth looking or worth knowing about. The NORD, National Organization for Rare Diseases, they do a lot of good research and a lot of patient information about it. And the Acoustic Neuroma Association, which is based, I think, in Atlanta, they have a very nice website with a lot of information about research related to their trials. Another one that I like a lot that's a relatively new one is Combined Brain, which is kind of a coalition of a whole about 40 or more rare neurodevelopmental disorders. Almost all are mutations or deletions or other genetic abnormalities associated with neurodevelopmental problems and tied in heavily to research. And I think that's NF isn't specifically part of that, but it's as a model, a very nice organization to look at. Now, moving on to online databases for clinical trials. The number one premier option here is clinicaltrials.gov, and it has become the case that to have a trial open, it almost has to be registered with clinicaltrials.gov. Over the last 20 plus years, they have built up a database that is over 500,000 trials, and about 76-75% of those are treatment interventions, and about 24% are observational. But it's this huge trial base of all kinds of studies. They also, on the website, have an extensive list of how to and what to look for and what to think about in terms of clinical trial options. Very good, informative things that you can learn about clinical trials as you look at their website. In the practical sense of how to do searches on it, they have that on their website. There are also videos that you can look at that show you how to do it. You can find even on YouTube, navigating clinicaltrials.gov. I found a very good recent one, and recently the clinicaltrials.gov updated their format and layout and made it, I think, very much easier to navigate. And there's a real nice one on YouTube that describes that. Another kind of interesting up and coming thing is the use of AI algorithms to match clinical trials to potential volunteers. And that's something I'm sure other people are working on, but the NIH sure is. So some very good information that you can get from them. Oh. Sorry, there we go. When you look on their website, it's required that it states what the purpose for the treatment or drug is. These are sometimes in detail. It gives all the details of who is eligible and who is not eligible for a particular trial, where the trials are open, and the point of contact for patients. So really the core stuff of how to connect with them if it looks interesting to you. They also have discussions of side effects for these trials. Eventually, basic results get put in, although oftentimes that's after the study is completed. A lot of times the results part isn't updated as the study's going on. So in that regard, it doesn't always answer your questions, but still, the information is pretty well laid out now, I think. When I did a search for NF1 on clinicaltrials.gov, I found 253 trials, of which 43 were recruiting and 13 were not open for recruitment yet. So a pretty big list, really, and kind of, if you really want to get into research in NF, a good place to see the breadth, of it, what topics are being studied, that kind of thing. Being interested in what's going on in Tennessee and what's available for our patients here, adding that to the search shows that currently there are 5 active trials. And a few months ago, I found 7, and you do every once in a while look back and look again rather and find that it's changed and updated and worthwhile every once in a while looking. Here are the searches for NF2 and schwannomatosis. There were 82 studies all told, of which 14 were currently recruiting. And in Tennessee, there was 1. And again, here's a website where you can save your search strategies. And you might write them down, but it'll allow you to save them so that you can go back again and go through the same search to see what's new. One thing you'll find on their homepage that's really interesting is something that was developed at Vanderbilt, remarkably. And I'm not part of the institute that did this, but it's called Victor, and it was designed to help people doing clinical research, researchers. And one of the things that they wanted to help do was connect researchers to patients who were the target population for their trials. This is called researchmatch.org. It currently has over 120,000 individuals who have signed up as potential volunteers and over 16,000 researchers and 1,333 clinical trials. It's a pretty huge, a database, really. Looking for NF, there are 14 trials. There are 70 people out of the 120,000 who list NF as part of their profile. So this is a way that if you put in your information, they will send you information about contacts for relevant trials. So a good way to be updated about new things and what is eligible for you. I got on this and put in my information, and I periodically get things back based on my age and what they're looking for volunteers for and things like that. But it's very good to see that you get information back from them. A similar kind of trial or trial database is Antidote. And this was on the NF Network site also, but they had 35 trials listed for NF1, and here you can see when I put in my age and such, what it showed in terms of trials. For NF2, they had 7 trials. Here again, they will kind of match you to trials that are relevant to your medical condition, the information you put in about it. Okay, switching gears just a little bit. The people who really want to get into the nitty gritty of developing clinical trials questions, designing trials and things like that. That's an important background piece in what happens in trial development, and in NF it's become a very organized and systematic process. And there's a group, it's called RAINS, Response Evaluation and Neurofibromatosis and Schwannomatosis, where they have committees for a whole set of different outcomes. On each of these committees, there would be researchers and statisticians, a whole bunch of people, including patients, patient representatives. And there's even a committee that's about patient representatives and how they contribute to the process. But these groups go through and develop, well, what are the best outcomes? How much smaller would a tumor have to be for me to be healthier? Or how many headaches do I have in a month? And what is an important difference if I have one less or five less, or those kinds of questions? What really is a valuable outcome? They publish their work, and so if you wanted to read what the experts came up with as endpoints for their clinical trials in all of these things in NF, you can find those published. And a good place to search for that is on the National Cancer Institute website, looking for RAINS. And I think I just Googled RAINS International Collaboration to get that. Dr. Merker, who is really one of the powerhouses, I would say, of this process, recently published a work where they looked at patient engagement and what that contributed. And they did a survey looking at what were the barriers, what are the motivations for patient representatives, what are the outcomes of having them involved, and concluded that it made a big difference. It really improved the perceived quality of the clinical trials for NF that were accomplished. And when it says perceived, I think it's important. Well, who is looking? Whose perceptions are we talking about? Patients, doctors, researchers, grant reviewers, pharmaceutical companies, the FDA. There's a long list of people that use what's generated and in the research sphere to decide where to go and what to work on. And having patients involved in that process of development of trials the way this does it really makes a difference. So just to kind of summarize about RAINS, selecting meaningful outcomes is important. Engaging patients in the design of trials is important. Helping to identify new areas of research and important outcomes is something that bringing patients in accomplishes. And this whole collaboration has improved outcome measures and the creation of new outcome measures for clinical trials. So this is really a place, if you want to get involved in research, this is kind of a great opportunity. And they have, Dr. Merker and her team, a way to join if people want to be involved. And a number of people on the NF Network board are involved. Rachel Mindrup, whose portraits of individuals with NF, she kindly allows me to use in my talks. She's one of the people that's involved. So anyway, this is a great opportunity if you really want to get into research in a helpful, important way. One other thing that's available and is I think one of the best things available in NF research is the NF Clinical Trials Consortium, which is a group of institutes with the best NF experts and researchers and the infrastructure to do clinical trials extremely well. and to get a lot of patients in these studies where the eligibility criteria are very strict and hard to recruit patients to. Dr. Korf has for many years been the director of this, and I think this is probably in a little bit outdated because I think there are going to be some other people involved in the directorship of the Clinical Trials Consortium, but he has been the flag waver and the leader of this for a long time, and they've done some great work, and they have work in progress, and it's one of these things that unfortunately has been really kind of hit by changes in terms of federal funding of research and things like that. And this is the crown jewel in NF research, and hope that there's a way to move forward with what they've done and have underway. So in conclusion, participating in NF registries and clinical research, if you can do it, do it. And again, there's a lot of barriers and reasons why not everybody can do it, and yet it's a great thing for yourself and for the community of NF patients as well. A good starting point is to ask your doctor, ask your specialist. They know a lot of this stuff and can help guide you as to what's useful and connect you to people if they can't help you with getting on trials and things like that. There are some great ways to get started on the national organizations' websites, and also the regional organizations for NF provide a lot of this information that I think is very helpful. The online databases, I think, are kind of the largest and best organized and best available places to really search regularly. And if you're really gung-ho about it and want to sink your teeth into it, the RAINS is a great way to participate. So I would consider this. I would say, as a conclusion, view the long journey that you're on with NF and keep learning more and more about it. And new ideas keep coming up. Search and learn how to look for new ideas. And clinical trials are part of that process. And find a way to share what you've learned. I think that's a message that resonates in the NF community, and a lot of people share that, and that'll be my concluding point. Many thanks again to the NF Network for hosting this series of webinars, and it's a real pleasure for me to participate, and if you have questions, get them to us and we'll try and answer them. Thank you.
Yes, it's so great to meet everyone. If we haven't met already, my name is Vanessa Merker, and I am a health services researcher working at Massachusetts General Hospital, so here in Boston. I've been working at the NF clinic here for most of the past 15 years, so very committed to NF research, and thank you to Paul for mentioning some of our time. If his presentation on the RAINS Patient Representative Program piques your interest, please feel free to reach out to me. I help run that program, and we always take new members. I think maybe for the sake of time, we can skip a long introduction for me. Does everything look okay in terms of the slides?
It looks just fine.
Okay, perfect. I'm super happy then to get a chance to talk to you guys about the growing movement to decentralize clinical trials, really unpack what does it mean to run decentralized trials, and to present two of the decentralized trials that I currently help run. I think this really builds on what Dr. Moots had shared in terms of what can you do to improve NF research from home, because this is really all about a movement to try and bring research to people's homes, to their local communities, so that they can participate more easily and we can involve more people in our research. So what is a decentralized clinical trial? When we hear this term, the official definition from the Food and Drug Administration, so the agency in the United States that regulates medicines, is that it's any clinical trial where some or all of the trial-related activities occur at locations other than traditional clinical trial sites, which are usually hospitals. So I'm going to borrow this two figures from PricewaterhouseCoopers to kind of illustrate what that means. When we think about kind of probably traditional clinical trials, which you're thinking about in your head probably when you think clinical trial, everything is centered around the hospital. That's where we as investigators work, where most of the major NF clinics are based. We have people who are coming into the hospital, often with a rigorous, maybe even onerous schedule of having to commute in to get blood draws, get imaging, complete study visits. And that can be not always the best experience, waiting in waiting rooms. If anyone here on this trial has been in a trial, you might have had that experience, waiting to get cleared to receive medication, going from one place to the next to get all of your assessments done. And so this has been kind of the standard for us to do assessments. But the move to decentralized trials was really a move to say, can we make this easier? Can we give people better access by moving some or all of these activities outside of the hospital? So we still have researchers like myself who are working at hospitals overseeing the study, but we do this work remotely. And then we really try to do all of our assessments either virtually, you can see here at the bottom left, so having people, for example, fill out surveys on their computer or have a telehealth call with an investigator so that they can do it from their home computer. We're trying to do things at home even. Here in the top right, you can see that could involve even a nurse or a traveling staff member coming to your house to do an assessment. There's been a growing move to have home health. People might have heard of that term, or visiting nurses, more care in the community, and we can leverage some of that for clinical trials. We also can, in the bottom right here, you can see community and local health clinics. So trying to involve people's local providers or local imaging centers. So for example, you probably have a Quest Labs in your own hometown. Can we send you there to get your blood draw rather than making you come drive all the way into the main hospital? So that's kind of where we're going and what we're hoping to do to really improve people's access and experience, make it a little bit hopefully easier to participate in clinical trials. And we can do this in a way that's fully decentralized or partially. So really you can think of this as a spectrum. We have here, I'm wondering if I have a pointer. Let's see. Probably have a, can you see my mouse? I wonder anyone if I point with that at least?
Yes.
Okay, I'll point here. So we can think of this really as a spectrum when you hear about decentralized trial. On the one end, we have the fully centralized trial, the traditional trial totally in the hospital. On the other end, we have this fully decentralized trial, 100% virtual. You never have to come into the hospital. But really in real life, there's kind of a mix. So if you hear these words like hybrid or partially decentralized, this is what you can expect. So it might be that a trial has some more complex procedures at the hospital. So maybe that's getting gene therapy or getting an infusion of medicine, something that's a little bit more intense, or specialized imaging. But maybe they have less complex trial procedures, things like routine vital signs or routine blood work at your local doctor, surveys that you fill out online. So it could be a mix of the two. And really what we're trying to see is how much can we decentralize to make it easier for folks while still keeping that, keeping people safe and keeping the quality of data good to answer our research questions. So really it's kind of like a menu, I would like to say, of decentralized options as you think about trials, as we're designing them, and as you're looking at what you might need to do to participate. There's a bunch of parts of the trial that may or may not be what we call decentralized. So this starts at recruitment. We're looking at new ways to do digital recruitment. So this builds on what Dr. Moots said about recruiting through the NF registry, recruiting through advocacy organizations like NF Network and NF Tennessee, asking them to pass on our flyers, and recruiting through social media groups, Facebook groups, Reddit groups, other groups that have patients with NF that we can reach. And this moves through to enrollment. So in enrolling in a trial, normally you have 20 pages of paper to sign, but we're trying to move that on to e-consent. So if you see this where you're asked to give your digital signature, sometimes you have to do kind of a special task because we want to make sure it's really you. So you can't just mark it. We'll have to do e-signatures, or you might see Adobe signature or DocuSign, those kind of programs to verify that you are actually signing up to participate. And this goes all the way through to delivering treatments even. So traditionally, you had to go to the hospital and pick up your medication, even if it was a pill, oftentimes because they needed to control how to dispense and reconcile those medications. But now there's been loosening of rules at the Food and Drug Administration that kind of regulate trials that are allowing us more and more to ship drugs directly to people's homes as part of studies. And of course, we also have a lot of interventions and trials, including the one I'll share today, that aren't about drugs or devices. They're about other things like psychological, cognitive, or kind of other care interventions that don't have anything to do with taking medicine that we can do and help virtually. And then as we kind of go down here and think about assessing people's safety and outcomes, so how they're doing on this medication, we're also thinking about how can we do that at home? Can we have monitoring at local labs? Can we use digital platforms where people can report kind of what's going on with them and have a quick telehealth visit with a study nurse? Can we use electronic surveys either on the web or in a mobile app? Can we use wearables, things like Fitbits or pedometers or other technology, maybe even your iPhone, the way it can monitor people's heart rates, your smartwatch? Can we incorporate those kind of real world measures to understand how people are doing without them having to come in? So these are all things that you might start seeing if you're signing up for research trials, especially decentralized trials where you're not going to come in to a specific hospital. And the reason that we're trying to do this, we think there's going to be a lot of benefits, hopefully. One is that we really just want to expand access to clinical trials. We want more people from across the country to be able to participate without having to spend money to travel to limited number of sites. We want to make participation more convenient, have fewer maybe or shorter in-person visits, even if we can't fully decentralize a trial. Can we cut down at least on some of the time you have to spend in clinic and make it more convenient, really in the hopes that if we have better access and it's more convenient for people, we'll be able to run our trials faster and retain people. One of the reasons that's important is that means it costs less, which means it's easier for us to run these trials efficiently and effectively and be able to study more treatments and get more things in the pipeline for everyone to hopefully benefit from. And we can also try to explore ways to have more real world data collection. So like I was talking about with Fitbits or other measures, are there things we can measure that are a little bit closer to your day-to-day experience because you're giving these measurements at home while you're living your normal life, so that we ultimately can make decisions that are more relevant to the outcomes that you care about. And so I'll use that to kind of transition. That's kind of the background about decentralized trials in general. And I wanted to share about two that I work on as a kind of concrete example. So I wanted to share a little bit about my research program. So this is just a diagram of kind of all research in America, the translational research spectrum. And you can kind of think of this as like a relay race. We start here with basic science, understanding biology, and then we move forward kind of to animal studies, understanding how drugs work in the body, doing clinical trials in patients, and then trying to get things into day-to-day practice and make them available to the whole population. And it's that part at the end of this spectrum that's where I sit as a health services researcher. So I'm really concerned about ways that we can take the best evidence, so new diagnostic criteria for NF, new treatments that have been approved for NF in a clinical trial, Could be new care guidelines, like the best ways that we know about taking care of people with NF. And how do we get that information to the people who need it and get them to use it so that it actually benefits the full population of people with NF to make care more effective, more equitable, more accessible, and really ensure that all patients, no matter where they live or how much money they have, are going to get high quality care. And so with that kind of background of what I'm interested in, I'm running 2 trials to try and improve care for people with NF1. So I know that you all understand NF1 is a really complex multi-system syndrome. People have a really wide array of physical, cognitive, and psychosocial issues that can develop across the lifespan. And here's just kind of a timeline of some of the times we typically start to see some of these issues arise. And you can see it's across a lot of body systems, a lot of things for people to kind of keep an eye out for that we need to monitor for to see if it develops. Because we don't really have great ways of predicting who is going to get what complication yet. But we do have the good news. That's a little bit scary that these issues can happen, but we do have very clear clinical care guidance from medical specialists. So the AAP is the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the ACMG is the American College of Medical Genetics and Genomics, who've made kind of a list of things that they think we should be doing to take care of people with NF, and particularly to screen them for new potential issues of NF that they might develop over time. I have some pictures here. Here are some examples. One is getting your blood pressure checked every year. Which you can say everyone is supposed to get their pressure checked every year, which is also true. But people with NF1 have a higher risk of developing something called renal artery stenosis or a tumor called a pheochromocytoma that can lead to high blood pressure. So knowing the NF1 specific issues that are reasons you should get your blood pressure checked, or issues that might be causing high blood pressure, is important to know. You can see some other things here. So skin exams to look for tumors, scoliosis screening, so looking at your back to see if it's curved and you might be developing scoliosis, seeing if kids are having signs of early puberty, which can be a symptom of a kind of brain tumor. Eye exams also to look for potential optic pathway gliomas, so getting those regularly as children. And for adults, we have guidelines for adults, including, for example, breast cancer screening, in which women with NF1 are supposed to start getting regular mammograms or breast MRIs earlier than women without NF1. So we have all of these guidelines, they all exist, but not everybody, unfortunately, gets them is the problem. So in reality, so I should say also part of this guideline is there is a recommendation that everyone have access to specialized NF clinics, to go to NF specialists. But we know in reality that just isn't the case. A lot of people don't have access to NF clinics for a variety of reasons. And in fact, in my own survey work, kind of the pilot data we have is that asking people in the NF registry where did they get their care, only about half of kids and a third-ish of adults had been to a major NF clinic in the past 3 years. So a lot of people are getting their care managed elsewhere. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are not getting this recommended screening. So I use the word health surveillance because I'm kind of focused on not the care you get if you already know you have a tumor or a complication, but just the regular screening you need to see if you might be getting those tumors. And you can see here on the right, this is just from our survey. So the numbers might be a little higher or lower in real life. But we asked adults and parents of children, did you get these things in the past year that we think that folks need? Like, did you get your blood pressure checked? Only 62% of adults said that they had had their blood pressure checked in the past year. And you can see those numbers can go down. Only about a third said that they had had a skin exam. And even for kids, it was a little bit better. But maybe only 2/3 were getting checked to see if they had scoliosis. So a lot of room for improvement, and kind of what I'm targeted at trying to improve. How do we get people to get this care? And so the research question that I'm really focused on is how do we improve NF1 patients' receipt of this kind of recommended health screening, knowing most people aren't actually going to NF clinics? And so the kind of possible answer we're exploring is, can we teach people and their local primary care doctors, so their local pediatrician or their local internist, the person you see just kind of on an annual basis, just to check in, can we help them understand NF1 guidelines so that it will improve their care and these rates of getting these health screenings? So we've been working together with a really big team to develop some educational materials that we want to give to both people with NF1 and their local doctors to help them learn about NF1 care guidelines. And in addition to our research team here at MGH, I just want to acknowledge we had a huge team here up at the top is actually the people with NF1 or parents of kids with NF1 who gave input on this material. Down here is actually 4 primary care doctors who gave us feedback about what that should look like and what would actually help a primary care doctor learn about NF. And you can see here on the right are some of our NF experts who have helped make some of these guidelines, who could help teach us what do we think is important for the other folks to know about NF. And so we've all come together to make these educational materials that we hope are going to help primary care doctors learn a little bit more about NF and implement these care guidelines as recommended. And so right now we're actually running a fully decentralized trial to test 2 different versions of this information. So there's 2 different ways, and we want to see which way works better. We're currently enrolling people who have a clinical diagnosis of NF1, so you don't need to have genetic testing or any proof. You just need to have a doctor who said you've had NF1. You have to live anywhere in the US and have not been to an NF clinic in the Children's Tumor Foundation NF Clinic Network in the past year. And have a visit coming up with your PCP, so your pediatrician, your child's pediatrician, or your primary care doctor in the next few months. And the way that this kind of study works is it's totally virtual. You never have to come to Mass General, so you can sign up for anywhere. We'll talk to you and see if you're a good fit. And if you are, we'll give you an online consent form to fill out. You take a baseline survey, so a survey before you go visit your doctor, just online at home. And then you'll receive letters for both you and your doctor. So you'll receive one of the 2 versions that we're testing, and we'll ask you to go take it to your visit. You go to that in-person visit, and then afterwards we'll ask you to do another survey, and that's it. Optionally, there's some other stuff that you could do an interview or let us kind of look at the medical record notes for your visit. But if all you want to do is take the survey, try out the letters, and take another survey, that's all we need. We pay up to $150 for people's time, and you can do it all from home, plus going in to see your doctor for your annual care. And we really hope this is going to help us understand, is this an effective way of involving people's primary care doctors in the NF1 care, especially for these people who aren't going to NF clinics and don't have an NF specialist to rely on. And so I have details here about, if you want to read more about the trial, you can go to clinicaltrials.gov and look up if you put in this number. And I think I'm happy to share these slides with everyone after. You can also email us. I have the email at the end of the slide deck if you want to just ask us any questions, me or our team. We're also doing a second study at the same time. So you might see, and you might have actually already seen if you have been a member of the registry or seen our flyers, because we're recruiting for both of these studies right now. We're also running a second fully decentralized kind of companion study to that. And we had the question, this is about creating written educational materials to share with folks, but maybe that's not enough. Can we help people with NF1 understand what care they need in better ways than just a written letter? And so we're actually testing 2 additions to my NF guide for folks. One is, can we make educational videos that actually walk people through what does it look like to get this care? Does that help them kind of see what to expect? Or also, would it be more effective to have a call with a peer navigator? So someone who has NF1 themselves, but also has been trained about communicating medical information, if they could talk to them for an hour and ask the questions before they went to see their doctor, would that be helpful? And is that a scalable way to help people who might need some more help figuring out what care they need as they navigate this space? And so we're currently, if you see the kind of ads for the MyNF Guide peer study, which is what we call this, we're currently recruiting that as well. So again, this is actually only adults, but as long as you live anywhere in the US and have NF1, you would be eligible. And we just ask before you go to see your primary care doctor that you give us the call and we can help sign you up. There's no requirements here, so where you get your care. So folks who do go to NF clinics would also be eligible if you're interested in helping educate your primary care doctor about this information as well. So I think I've already mentioned this, what you can do to do decentralized trials. I'll say it's not on the slide for decentralized trials in general. Please keep an eye out on clinicaltrials.gov. Unfortunately, right now, there's no marker of what trials are decentralized. You have to put in a location. So for example, if you were to look up the study I just said that I'm running, it says it's in Boston, Massachusetts. There's no way to say it's actually just virtual. They kind of pin it to where I am. So it's a note to say, I know that's a frustrating thing, and I hope that we can convince them to change some of their search filters. But please feel free to ask questions that even when you see a trial that looks like it might be somewhere that's not convenient for you, that you can ask questions and see what travel is really involved. So for example, both of our studies, none at all. So if you're interested, please feel free to email us at mghnfresearch@mgb.org. That's massgeneralbrigham.org. That's the health system we work for. You'll reach one of the 4 people here on our team. I know sometimes when you have a generic email, you're like, who am I emailing? This is who would be on the other end. Our wonderful research coordinators, Evan, David, and Sophia, have been running this trial, and Paulina is our wonderful project manager. And even if you're not interested or you don't have a PCP visit coming up, we appreciate anything you can do to spread the word. We are trying to enroll 360 people with NF1 of all ages, 0 to 100, in all 50 states. We're setting a really ambitious goal to show that decentralized trials can work and that people from all over want to participate. So I have here a little map just as I close out. Red is where we already have at least one person signed up. The gray, we're still missing. So I'm going to say, if you happen to live in one of these gray states, I extra am interested in your help in sharing the word. We really want to be a trial that represents everyone and involves everyone from every place to see if this is really going to be something that works long term. And I'll just say thank you to the team. This is us here at Mass General. It's been a huge effort. There are so many people who put time into this, as I mentioned, including NF1 patients and parents and doctors and our funders. So it's been a huge effort. And we really appreciate everyone who's already signed up for the time and effort, and would love to have even more folks join us if possible. And I'll be here for questions either now or also later, and you can always email me directly as well.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. That was really helpful. Actually, really exciting. I can remember when decentralized trials was just a dream, right? And look where we are now. They're starting, they're catching fire. And I love the red map, right? So I already know Kansas. We can take care of Kansas. We can get that one off the list. And we'll work hard to help you get that 360 people so that can go forward and just show everybody that this is something that can be possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.